I'll give it a couple of minutes for you guys to shoot some questions at me, fill it as a recommendation. If we don't see any questions, then I can, move forward.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for sharing your video. It's good to see some people who are speaking. And I'd like to take a minute to talk about a support group that we know, that we've come across recently on Instagram by Dr. Baines and Dr. Wrinkle. I'm going to share that they've sent us. You can join this support group too. They have weekly webinars where they invite dentists from all across the US and Canada and have them share their experience and their journey about getting into DDS. So happy to share very quick with you who they are and how you can. And here we go. So they're called Curing Smiles. They're a platform for live online discussions. You can check out their Instagram page and empowering people. And over here, it's clearly mentioned they have speakers, students, and both graduates. We will be joining them next week and speaking on their platform. So you can listen to our story once again over there if you haven't yet already on YouTube. And they're both on Facebook and Instagram. Feel free to ping them, follow them, and engage with the whole community. Is the lower section over?
Yeah, but you need to share.
Is it over?
Yeah. I don't see anybody asking any questions, so I'm just going to move on to the next section.
Yeah, they are putting it in chat. I'm adding it to the presentation.
Oh, is it about LOR?
Yeah, so one question about the LOR. First question about CEO versus this thing. I think the candidate joined the conversation late.
I just meant to say that if you're getting the letter from the CEO, just because that person is a CEO of a corporate, if that's your only reason, then it's probably not a good idea to do it. Because for a person, the admissions, committee over here, it doesn't really matter if you are, they don't know who this corporate company is. So they don't really, they don't want to know what a CEO thinks about you. So if this on the other hand, if the CEO knows you really well, that's the reason why you want to get it, then it's okay. If not, then it's advisable for you to just get it from your US dentist. Even if you shadow for 20 days, you'll probably get a good letter of recommendation from this person. And it might hold more value than something from India. Okay, so if you don't have the questions, we can move on to the next section.
All right.
Wait, what about those?
We'll come to them in the end.
Okay. All right, schools. Which universities to apply? What are the blue questions? You don't want me to answer?
No, it's just to keep it all together.
Okay. Which universities to apply as a fresh graduate? I would recommend you to apply to all the schools. As many schools as you can apply to is the golden rule for an international applicant, just because it increases your chances and it gives you more invites. You might get better along the process. Schools don't most schools don't prefer fresh graduates or prefer experienced people, except USC. USC publicly states that they will take only students who have masters. So that might be a school you want to stay away from, but if you're the school, if your visa permits that, you can apply to. Being a third-time applicant, how do I prioritize what schools to apply to? So if you're a third-time applicant, a couple of things. You have to reapply to the schools you applied to in the past, especially to the schools. Okay. Just a request, can everybody mute their microphones so that everyone else is able to hear clearly? Thank you. Appreciate that. So yeah, when you're a third-time applicant, or even if you're a second-time applicant, it is better to apply to the schools who invited you, or apply to the schools you already applied to because it's not a bad factor for a school to see an applicant over and over again. In fact, they look at you as somebody who has more perseverance, so you might actually get an interview invite. But what is more important is when you're reapplying, make sure that you change the way your application looks, make sure that you've made improvements, you've shown what you've done in the past 1 year. It has to be significant. It can't be anything like, what I mean by significant is you don't have to do anything so great. It can be extra shadowing hours, or it can be extra volunteering. But how has it impacted your life? Like, how has it changed you as a person is what they're looking for. And that difference can really make an impact and make them call you for an interview. What are the dates of CAAPID application starts in various dental schools? So each school has separate, start dates. Most schools would have started on March 3rd when the application cycle opened. And most of their deadlines would be around April, May, or June. But if you want to get the specific dates, you either have to go to the, excuse me. You either have to go to each school's website, or you can find all of that information in CAAPIDedia, which is in the Inner Circle website, where you'll have each school and you'll be able to find when the application starts and when it ends. Okay, next question. Which college, according to you, has the best program overall for an international dentist? No green card, curriculum, location, fees, clinical experience. I mean, it's hard to tell that because honestly, all the schools that provide the international program are pretty good. And it doesn't really matter where you go to school, majorly because you don't learn like everything in the 2 years of dental education. You have to eventually add to your experience by taking either continuing education courses, doing a residency, or fellowships to build your experience before going into whatever goal it is for you. Now, choosing a school really depends on what your goal is moving forward. If you want to set up a private practice, then you want to go to a school that is, that has a lot of clinical experience. But that is also, a questionable thing, because in 2 years, you're not going to get too much clinical experience. And especially in a school setting, you'll get, a reasonable amount, but not too much. So, every school varies in terms of fees. Some schools might have more clinical experience and less fees. It's hard for me to generalize and talk about every school. But if you specifically have a list of schools, that you want to go over with, then you can always, reach out to us, and I'll set up a call with you and I'll go over your schools and talk about your goals, and then we can decide instead of going over it, in a generalized way. This is an interesting question. What does Southern Illinois School stand for? I meant, what's really good there and what kind of students they pick? So Southern Illinois School doesn't stand for anything. SIU stands for Southern Illinois University School of Dental Medicine. It's a part of Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. So SIUE, it's a part of the university. What is really good here is I get a lot of clinical experience. I honestly feel like because we are integrated with the traditional students and the international student number is extremely low. They only take 6 students. So you don't feel like, you don't get a lot of cases. In fact, you get way too many cases that it's very hard to handle. I feel like I can get a lot of experience here. The school is not big on research. So if you're somebody who's up for research and I want to go to that kind of a school, this is not what you're looking at. What kind of students do they pick? They pick students who are, one, they're very experienced or they have a specialty. 2, you can be a fresh grad, but you're showing your ability to learn, and you've had previous experiences that have shown that you're capable of managing a stressful situation, and you're capable of learning from different cases. You've had exposure to a diverse number of cases. See, I'm a fresh graduate. I am an SIU, and I have so many other classmates who are, specialists. Some have years of experience, and others have 2 or 3 years of experience. So really, it's a mixture. It really depends on how you impress upon them. Why did you opt for SIU when you were accepted at many other schools? Personally, I chose SIU for 2 reasons. One is it's very big on clinical, And 2 is living expenses in this part of Illinois is very less. And 3 is Karthik. Karthik is my fiance, so he works in Chicago, Illinois, so which is very close to me. That is better than working in Buffalo, New York, or California. So I chose that. So those are my reasons. What does University of Nevada, Las Vegas look for? So UNLV does not really specify if they want like a specialist or a fresh grad. They've taken both kinds of students. So it's pretty much like any other school where you can't really tell what they're looking for. You just have to make sure that you do your interview well and your bench exam should be top notch. That's the only way you can get in. What are the schools that focus on community service? If the question is meant to ask which schools focus on are you asking which schools focus on the applicant's community service, or are you asking which schools have a lot of community service in their curriculum? Applicants with community service. Almost all schools look for it. A good number is around 200 hours of community service, of US community service, whether you do it online. So with COVID, nobody's been able to do volunteering, but there's a lot of online volunteering opportunities that you can sign up for. You can go to volunteermatch.com, and there's a lot of opportunities there which you can do online. If not for 200 hours, at least try to get 100 hours of community service. That will really help you to boost up your statement of purpose and also your application.
It doesn't have to be just dental.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be dentistry related or healthcare related. It can be anything.
It doesn't have to be only with a non-profit organization. You can work for a for-profit organization too.
Correct. Which advanced standing program universities have no bench exam and only interview-based process? Okay, so off the top of my mind, I know that University of Penn and Rutgers and Boston University don't have bench exam, only interview, but you'll have more information of that in CAAPID, which I probably can share right now and show it to you, so it'll be easier for you to access it after the webinar. So that's CAAPID. So if you go into it, you'll be able to choose certain schools. Yeah, so right here. So it has like the entire list of schools, and you'll be able to figure out which school has interview, which school has bench exam, which doesn't have bench exam. So it's just an easier way to find it out in one place. Another way is, so if you don't have that information here, for example, we wouldn't have some information on the website. That's just because even the website, even the school hasn't mentioned it, and they change it every year. That's the reason why. If you find yourself in that situation, the best thing to do is to directly email the school, and they will be responsive. Good. Okay, that's good to know, Sabiha. Like as I told, I just told the schools off the top of my mind. NYU does not have bench exams, so which is good as well. Has UB got bench test prep course this year? I'm not sure if they have bench test prep course this year. It all depends on how COVID things, roll out. Yeah, the course. Yeah. It'll have, but UB is probably going to have the bench course only if they have their bench exam. So if people start inviting you guys to be in person, then yeah, you can expect them to give out a bench test course.
Look out for CU. They will set the precedent in terms of whether bench is a good option this year or not.
And that might change during the year, just because people are, getting their vaccines, and you might be called for an in-person interview, but that's not something that, we can tell for sure at this point. Is there any school that does not accept home edition of TOEFL? This is also something that you have to check either in CAAPID or you can check in every school's website. In some of the schools they have not mentioned, which means they do accept it, like, by default, or the best thing to do is to just directly contact them and ask if they accept it, because if they don't, then there's no point in taking it. Let's see, next. Do we have that information? The schools which have the requirement of TOEFL below 100, do they accept anyone below 100 ever? Yes, they do. It does not matter. If I'm right, I think SIU also takes students who have TOEFL score below 100. I'm not too sure about this point. I think they do. So by wanting a score above 100, they're not expecting you to be great literary experts. What they want you to be is, are you able to communicate well? Am I able to understand what you're saying? Are you able to understand what I am saying to you? So as long as that is there, you're okay. So on application, even if your score is below 100, if the school accepts candidates who have TOEFL score below 100, you're okay. My advice is probably try to take another exam just because of the sheer competitive nature of this process. But other than that, if you don't have the time to do it, you're fine, because they've mentioned that they will take students. I would say compensate for that by giving really good essays in your supplemental answers and in your SOP, which shows your communication skills to them. Should I apply for universities that have citizens as priority? If you're a US citizen, sure, yeah. You are, honestly, if you're a US citizen, you will be given preference in every school that you would apply to. So I would just say that, if you have that advantage, make use of that advantage and apply to as many schools as you can. You don't have a limitation there. What are the universities that work on rolling basis? This is also something that you'll find on CAAPID. I don't want to, waste the time that we have right here for this 1 hour mentioning all the schools. You'll be able to find that as soon as you go into CAAPID, you'll have all of that information. So you can find that over there. And so I want to stop here and explain to some students what rolling basis is, because I know some students came to us asking about it. So by rolling basis, schools mean that we will start sending out invites as the applications come in. So that is rolling basis. As opposed to like a school that is not on rolling basis, for example, they will, if the deadline is June 9th, they'll wait until June 9th to get all the applications in, and then they'll review all the applications, and then they will decide who to invite. So that is not rolling basis. But a rolling basis school, why you should be careful is because as they get applications, they'll be like, okay, this application looks good, I'm going to send an invite. So once they're to the point where, okay, I'm inviting like 100 people, I'm done. And then it doesn't really matter to them how many other people send applications in. So that's the sad reality of rolling basis, which is why it's pretty important for you to apply early. All right, next. NYU wants 2 letters from dental school faculty members. What if my 3rd letter is from a dentist with whom I've worked in Canada? That's all right. As long as you're able to get 2 letters from dental school faculty members, one of the faculty members, if they can be a dean, if they're a dentist, that's fine. But if you work for the dentist in Canada, you're okay to submit that letter. It's not a problem at all. If you guys have any questions with this section related to schools, you can ask that too, and then we'll address it later. All right, application.
Want some water?
Do you want to address some questions? And I will take a minute.
Yeah, I just wanted to give some perspective on LORs. So people have questions about whether you can write an LOR for your recommender. Now, while that's not exactly the way it's supposed to happen, recommenders do appreciate, not just in the US, but even across the world, do appreciate the student or the candidate applicant walking up to the recommender and giving them points about what they can mention. The ideal appraisal process all over the US happens this way. You as an applicant or you as a person who's getting appraised or recommended, walk up to your recommender, have a conversation with them for at least an hour or half an hour, and remind them of the key points that they would have observed in your profile. So if you think about that, that can translate into writing bullet points on yourself and giving it to them. We go all the way to the extent where we write the LOR itself sometimes for our recommenders, but I'm saying that it's not completely unheard of because it is a very normal part of an appraisal process where the appraiser must listen to the person they're recommending, get their inputs, and then craft it along that way. If somebody has observed you 2 years, 10 years ago, they're not going to obviously remember who you are right now. And that's where your inputs to your recommender come in as very, very important. If it comes in the form of bullets, it comes in the form of conversation, or it comes in the form of a discussion, a written discussion. It can be anything, but it's very important that you provide inputs to your recommender and then have them kind of crystallize that the right way to get your best profile out. If you do not do that, you're missing a good opportunity of not putting yourself. A lot of people are shy, saying that, how can I tell my recommender to write about myself? Wouldn't that look like boasting? No, that does not look like boasting. That is you reminding your recommender what are key observational points that they would have known about you. So there's no shame, or there's nothing wrong in doing it. That's the right way to do it, in fact. So please step up and ask your recommenders whether you can give active input in crafting the recommendation and helping them rejig their memory. All right, we'll come to the questions at the end in just a bit, but let's just go through a few more, just two more sections.
All right. Application related questions. Okay. I hope I can answer everything. What does the college admissions committee look for in an international dental student during interviews? That is a very hard question. Thanks for throwing that at me. So there's not like one set thing.
Should we answer interviews in a different webinar? Because now it's like the application.
Yeah, we'll have a different webinar for interviews, but I'll just like give a very general, answer to this question. We can be more specific for interview-related webinars. They look for a candidate who is willing to learn. They look for a candidate who is not, trying to sell themselves to the admissions committee. By that, I mean, like, I've done this, I've done that. It's okay to talk about your achievements, but there is a line where you stop doing that and, stop selling yourself. It has to be a regular conversation with the person. They're trying to see if you're a person who's easy to talk to. Are you a person who, who's all about yourself, who never stops to ask questions, or who never stops to see if the other person is actually understanding you? And then they're also trying to see if you're a person who talks with examples, or is it a person who's being too generic? Just saying, like, I'll give you an example question. If they ask you, like, what is your weakness? And you just go like, oh, I just work too hard. That's just too general, right? I mean, it might be true. A lot of us over here, our weakness is we work too hard and we try to reach that perfection. And it is true. It's not a cliched answer, but it has to be specific. It has to be, an example from your life that can show that. I'll stop at that and we'll talk more about that in another interview. Okay, we'll talk about applications here. Where can I upload my official school transcripts in the CAAPID application? So you should be able to send it directly. The new CAAPID application has some modifications to it. So I'll have to get back to you on that question. I'll post answers about this on the Inner Circle forum. So the questions on which I'm not sure about, I'll post answers in the Inner Circle forum. Okay. Where are we supposed to mention dental camps attended in India? So that can be something you can mention in your community service. So as long as it's a profound experience that you did it for a couple of months or something, under experiences, there'll be a drop down which says community service. So in that, you can add it with the proper dates and everything. MDS degree and ordering of its ECE. So ECE can be done for all of the degrees that you've done. So when you order your general report, that is the course by course report, they'll ask you for what courses have you completed. So as long as you include your information about your MDS as well as your BDS, then you should be able to get it all together. What to mention in relevant information? So in relevant information, there are a couple of things that you can mention. If you're a reapplicant, there's already a spot for you to say what has changed since your last application. But if you don't have, if you have more information to cover that you cannot cover in your, what has changed since application, then you can include that over here. You don't have to make it about your personal struggles. Personal struggles are written in your statement of purpose. They're written in your supplemental answers. There is no purpose in being redundant and repeating it over and over again. So if you want to use this spot to talk about some of your some of the courses that you've taken, which maybe you did not mention somewhere else, you can use the spot to mention that. I'm currently in the US on tourist visa, but I recently got married to a green card holder. Congratulations. And I've put my immigration file. Does this make any difference in my application to the dental schools? It could potentially make a difference. So if you apply to dental schools, they might look at it in two ways. One is this going to be a problem in terms of immigration? Two is, they might look at you as somebody who's about to get their green card. So I know of two applicants, but they were not on tourist visa. They were here on H4 or F4, and I mean F2, dependent visas, and then they applied for their green card. And when they apply to dental schools, they apply to schools that prefer green card holders and only accept green card holders too. And they just let them know that my green card holder, a green card is still in process. So that was still an accepted thing to do. So you could probably do that. Where can we add the certifications like OSHA and HIPAA? So these can be added under licenses. They're not licenses, but they still can be added under that. Like, I know there's another upcoming question about BLS that is also added under license section. Other than that, like, there's no other spot where you can add it. So even your radiology license, you can add it over there. If you've taken a bench test preparation course in the past, how should I mention it on my CAAPID experiences section? Is it required to mention? It's not required to mention, but you can mention it in your CV as a continuing education. It's not an extra, experience that you did. It's just a learning thing. So I would advise you, if you're, for example, Stevenson's course gives you credits. So you can mention it in your CV as continuing education, restorative dentistry, and write it down. Or if it doesn't give you credits, you can still mention it as restorative dentistry course in the US or so and so. How many hours did you do? You can do that. But it cannot be mentioned under experiences. How do you write experiences when you shadowed at a clinic in 2018 for a month and then again in 2019? Do you mention it twice under CAAPID experiences? Yeah, you mention it twice because they only give you one time period when you write down your experience. So it gets confusing for them if you say 2018 to 2019 because that'll sound like a year. But you always have your CV to clarify that. So just mention it twice. How can you upload ADAT scores? So ADAT is taken through the ADA, just like NBDE. So you have to go into the ADA website, log in with your dent pin, and request for your official scores from that to be sent to CAAPID. There's a specific code for that. I don't remember what the code is, but that I will include in the forum as well. So you send it to them and it will be sent electronically. It takes 10 to 12 business days from the day you order the report. Can I send the TOEFL score only the last one? It's up to you. If you think that it's a good score and I want to submit it, then yeah, you can submit it. The current application will not have any of your previous TOEFL scores. So if you think you have a good score, go ahead and send that. In case of more tests as a second-time applicant to CAAPID, I'm not sure what you're asking there. So if you want to repeat that question in the chat, I can answer that for you.
Yeah, they submitted the previous TOEFL score in the previous cycle.
Okay.
And this cycle they're asking.
I don't think it's carried forward. That's what I noticed with some of the applications this year. So it shouldn't be a problem for you. You can directly go ahead and upload the recent one. Can I add in important CE activities in CAAPID application? You can upload. So since there's no spot for you to add CE activities, one of the areas you can add it is in the relevant information, where you'll have like a spot to add everything. Or you can add it in like what has changed since your last application. If it's a relevant, it's a profound experience, not just something that you took for 1 hour online and it didn't really add up to anything. As long as it's a good one, you can add it. Which section does BLS go? Basic life support. It goes under licenses. What are the kind of extracurricular activities that can be added? Anything that's related to service. It's not common to see people writing about sports or anything, just because it's not that relevant. You might write about it in your statement of purpose, but you don't necessarily have to include it in your CAAPID application. You can write about your community service, which is also considered extracurricular here in the US. So I think we've covered everything.
No, we haven't. There are more questions.
Oh, okay. All right. How to make our application outstanding from others if we don't have research or awards, but have more years of clinical experience? Because we will have to leave the achievement section empty in the application. Can we add if we score highest in a subject in our dental school? That the application is looked at and is attractive enough for an interview call. Thanks a lot for your guys. Well, thank you for finding our help helpful. I mean, this is a question that everybody has on, how to make something more attractive and how to, show yourself in the best light. If you've had more years of clinical experience, that's a plus in your application. So try to make that show out in your application as much as possible by talking about it in your statement of purpose, talking about it in your other experiences section. In awards, yeah, you can include if you scored highest in your school. If you did that, then you can include it in your awards section. If you haven't done any research, it's okay, but if you've done any research assistantship or volunteering in research, that would benefit you because you've had some kind of research experience. It's just because of the competitive nature of this process. That's the only reason why you want to include that part. So I guess the best thing to do is to try to get some kind of research experience. You don't have to publish a paper, and you can't do it in such a short period of time too. But at least if you can be a research assistant or shadow somebody or help somebody with their research, you can include that as your experience. Another great way to improve your application is to include community service. Community service is looked at very highly in the US. So if you're able to accrue more experience and write about that, then that really shows out in your application.
Research doesn't have to be dental oriented only, and it doesn't always have to end up in a publication. It can be even for a company, it can be market research too. So that as well counts because you have the same skills that you're applying to get that experience.
Having said that, when you're writing about your research experience, if you haven't published a paper, that doesn't go under publications. It goes under experience and research. If you write anything under publication, then it has to be written in the prescribed format, which you will see under references in each article, where you'll mention every author. You can't just mention your name. They need to know, are you the first author or are you the fifth author? And I know that several candidates, even if it's unethical, I know that several candidates do not know anything about the paper, but just get their name published. I know that, under certain circumstances, you're pushed to do things like that. But if you did do something like that, at least try to learn something about that research paper, learn something about the process, because they will ask you questions. Because the admissions committee are smart. They know that some students do that. So they will pick up on your research paper and they'll be like, what did you do? What was your role? What did the paper do? What was the inference? And if you sit there not knowing anything about it, then, whatever you did so hard to get that on your profile just goes in vain. So that's something you want to keep in mind. Shadowing in a dental clinic is what type of experience on CAAPID? Shadowing can be written under 2. If you volunteered, it goes under volunteering. If you didn't volunteer, you just shadowed, it goes under dental related experience. It's not employment because you were not compensated for it. How do you count the hours invested in a mission trip? If you travel to a different country, do you count the traveling hours or just the hours spent working? Definitely the hours spent working, because if you count the number of traveling hours, especially when you go to a different country, that will come to a lot and you wouldn't have spent that many. Just going to a different country to do a mission trip is a significant experience in itself. So I recommend to just mention how many hours you spent working and elaborate on what you learned there in the description section. That will really make a difference to your application. What counts as a certificate program? How can certificate program is any program that does not give you a diploma or a degree. There are 1-year certificate programs, 6-month certificate programs. They're all certificate programs, and please don't confuse that with anything that can give you a certificate. That's a different thing, which you do paper presentation or something, or you do a CE course, you get a certificate. That's not a certificate program. It's any program that you do, but you don't get a degree for it, like as in you don't get a diploma, but you get a certificate stating that you completed this course. That's the certificate. How can, the same question, BLS is classified as a license. You can put it under license and upload a picture of your BLS license. Yes, you should include it in your application. How to list an experience that lasted only 1 day. You can still list it if it's a volunteering or something. Just choose what experience it is. Choose the date, and you don't have to choose the end date, or you can choose the same date as the end date, and just say, you know, duration 1, and say what you did. That's completely acceptable. Can I take some time to finish my application 2 weeks from now? Yes, you can. So it's March now. As long as you guys are able to get your application in by the end of April, you're all in a good spot. That's considered a good time to get applications in. Now, I know that some of you are waiting for the application, like, you know, start date to open and then immediately send the application in. Don't do that, because the only reason is I and some people have had experiences in the past where the admissions committee have lost your application. They don't know where it is. So it's a waste of money. It's a waste of effort. Don't do that. Wait at least for 1 or 2 weeks. You know, get your application right. While it's important to send it as soon as possible, it's also important to curate your application really well so that when they look at it, they think it's good and they're able to send you an invite. It's not just something where you fill something up and just, you know, push it away. Don't do that. It's okay to take 2 weeks. Make sure you have a good application before you send it through. Should I submit after?
Talk about the review it in batches.
You want to talk?
Yeah, after you finish.
Should I submit after updating TOEFL score, or first submit and then update TOEFL score? No, I think it's better for you to update TOEFL score before sending it. By update, I think you're telling me that, you know, your TOEFL scores are outdated and you have to like update them. The school does not accept your application if your TOEFL scores are out of date, and each school has a requirement of that. For example, schools like Buffalo, schools like UCSF, they don't take your application if your TOEFL score is not valid until the time of matriculation. That is until the time you start school if you get accepted. So make sure that your date and the date that, you know, whatever they mention, or some schools will just say it has to be valid for 2 years. So if at any time it looks like, you know, it's going to expire, make sure that you retake it before you apply. Because it doesn't matter even if you like send it in now, because they'll just, you know, they'll sidecar it and then they'll look at it later. So that doesn't do us any good.
All right. I think many of you will be familiar with the concept of FIFO, first in, first out. If you've shadowed in any clinic, you would have seen how the inventory management process happens. FIFO basically means that if there are a bunch, let's say there's a pipe, then you put tennis balls from one side. The first tennis ball that you'll take out will be the first tennis ball that you put in. So if there are 100 tennis balls, the first one in will be the first one out. It's the same concept that applies to applications as well. First in, first out. First application that goes in comes out, but there's a small difference. It's not that as soon as the application comes on the CAAPID portal, immediately somebody downloads it and reviews it and passes it on and sends you an interview invite. That's not the way it's done. Naturally, for them, they'd have to optimize time. So they will wait until a certain number of tennis balls accumulate in the pipe and then offload the pipe. That means that an admissions committee reviews your applications in batches. When you think about that, it's not about getting into the race fast. It's about getting into the race early. There's a difference between fast and early. Fast means I just want to somehow make it first, irrespective of what quality. Getting it early could be sending it in April, but sending the right application, because I know in that batch, I want to be extremely competitive and extremely well curated. For example, like we had the program director from SIU join us last week. Right now, they invite 24 people to the interviews, and the number of applications they receive is 300. So they're not going to take every one application, immediately review it, and call the next candidate in. They would take batches of applications together and then call 18 candidates, 24 candidates to the interview. And then they would take the next, then call the next thing. So it happens in batches. So try to be competent, and make sure quality over speed matters a lot. Like it'll make a big difference in the application. Okay, I think the next question, should I answer? Okay, we have 8 minutes. This question, I know a lot of people have questions about COVID. I got so many messages today. Maybe we'll just create a YouTube video to answer this over the weekend.
Answer the questions that they've sent in the comments.
We have a few other questions as well. Do you want to quickly take a few from this?
101 is a good score. I think you should just go ahead and apply, and you can try taking the test. And if you get a better score, you can send it to CAAPID. But this is not a factor for you to wait. We addressed this question. So there are some, but I think I'm going to make a video on C courses, and I'll post it on YouTube so you guys can watch that. It doesn't pertain to application, so I don't want to take that up now. Just for writing a unique personal statement. You should be able to apply for preceptorships with a professional degree.
Maybe we switch to Q&A very quick. Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll switch to Q&A, and this means you can unmute your mics and ask us questions. Preferably put your video too on. We'll take the questions that come to audio or video first, rather than reading it out of chat, because the chat is extremely cluttered.
Hello, Karthik and Nourah. I have a question about the one-day event experiences like Mission of Mercy. You don't have a particular supervisor in that kind of clinic, because like a lot of dentists come in and you randomly assist some other dentists in the program, and so you don't have a particular supervisor. So should we mention that in an experience section, or should it be under other relevant information?
I'm sorry, can you come again? Because I couldn't hear you in the first half.
Oh, sorry. I was asking, like, one-day experiences like Mission of Mercy, you don't have a particular supervisor in that. It's just like a lot of dentists in there, and you just assist any dentist present and who needs help. So should we mention that in experience section, but then leave the supervisor section empty, or should we just mention the other relevant information?
So you would have gone to the Mission of Mercy through somebody, right? Like either your dental clinic or school?
No, like we can, anybody who has a dental assistant license can just go on the OK Mom page, and you can just register to volunteer. So not particularly through a dental.
So whatever page you went to, mention the website link there. That should be enough.
Okay, that works. Thank you.
Any other questions? You can directly like unmute yourself and ask, because the chat is clogged and I don't want to miss out any questions.
Hi, I do have a question.
Yes.
So I'm a reapplicant this year, and CAAPID has questions like what changed in your application since last year, and what do you think were your weaknesses last year? How do we answer this question?
So this, you try to answer it like in a way that would strengthen your application. So if you have accrued any extra experience during this 1 year, it can be anything simple, like maybe you've added more shadowing hours, or you've added more community service hours, or you did an extra CE course. But what's important is to mention what did you learn from that. Like, for example, you shadowed for extra like 50 hours or 100 hours in this 1 year. What did you learn out of was different from your previous experience is what you have to mention. It doesn't matter what you did, it matters like what you learned from it. So that's what you have to mention there.
Right.
And for your second part, what was the second part of the question?
What do you think were your weaknesses last year?
Yeah, so weaknesses can be anything starting from application to interview to bench exam. So for example, you felt like I did not give out a good application where, I really spoke about myself. You can be honest about that. You can say that I do not know how to present myself in the best way. So this application, I've made sure that I've organized myself really well, and I put my best foot forward. That can be something. Or your interview. In my previous cycle, I did not, interview well. My interview skills were not so great, so I improved them by doing so and so. I did communication classes. I read some books. I took up some online courses. All of these are, so again, the same factor comes in. It doesn't matter what your weakness was. What did you do to overcome that? Or what are you doing currently to overcome that?
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, hi.
Hi.
Basically, my TOEFL score has not yet expired, but
Okay.
universities schools like UB, they want an updated one, like not late, not the ones not before 2020. So in this case, I've already like my application, CAAPID application, they have already got the score, which is not yet expired. So how do do I still apply or wait for my new score and then update it and then carry on with the application?
So are you saying that there's a specific school that says that your score should not be older than December 2020?
Yeah, so like I called UB and they said that they don't want any scores before 2020 January. So they want all the scores from January 2020. So mine is, which is still valid.
Go ahead. Yeah. So the reason why that is as I mentioned, like before when you're speaking, schools like University of Buffalo, NYU, they have a requirement that your TOEFL score should be valid until the time you start school if you get accepted. So if you consider it in that way, your score would have expired. So that is why they're like, we need it from this point, which, is unreasonable, but that's how they work. But, what you can do is, since you already uploaded it, go ahead and apply to every other school that does not, require, that does not have the requirement, and then retake TOEFL and then send the TOEFL score to CAAPID and to UB. So that's what I did. My scores were expired when I did, and I took the exam again and I sent it separately to Buffalo.
Okay, so I don't apply to Buffalo for the start till I receive my new scores, and then
it doesn't matter even if you apply, because they'll not look at your application until they'll call it incomplete until you update your TOEFL score.
Oh, okay, right, got it. Okay, thank you so much. Really helpful seminars. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Another question again. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
We talked before that there's two sections. First is what you improved in your application, and the second section is they put a new question here that what are the weaknesses you think. So is it okay if we list out our new addition to our application on the first question and then explain everything in detail in the second one, or should we have two separate answers for that?
So these two questions are not the same. What has changed since your last application, and what were your weaknesses in your previous application are two different questions. Yes, you can list all your experiences that has changed in your first question, but then you only have to address the weaknesses in your second question. So there's a difference.
Okay.
We'll have to create a video about it. We got that question several times.
Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome.
Hi, I have one question about community services. So all our community services goes under in experience or in CAAPID?
Yeah, it goes under experience. So if you go into the experience tab and click on the down arrow, you'll see community service, dental experience. You'll see, you won't see community service, you'll see volunteer activities. So choose volunteer activities and put it under that. It's an experience.
Okay, even if it is around 2 to 3 hours, then it will be fine to put in experience.
Yeah, if you want to mention it, yes, it has to go under that. But make sure that you mention that it is 2 to 3 hours. It's a one-day event. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions we can answer? If you have more questions, you can, email it to us, then we can post the answers on Inner Circle Forum. And there are some questions you want to specifically make videos on. So if you want us to make a video on something, you can ask that to us. You can request that as well.
One last question, sorry. My one of the supervisor who is going to write one recommendation letter for me. So she was actually she was my employer. So she worked as a dentist at a previous place where I worked as a dental assistant. but now she's not, and she's not the part of that team. I mean, that group. So her letter of recommendation, does it still count or no? It doesn't. Like, I don't know if that is validated.
It counts. Yeah, it's everybody understands if people, your recommenders, have had career shifts, changed institutions, changed clinics, and so on. So they will not hold that against you if they have moved out to the place that they're recommending from. If you want to ask about what letterhead will they have to give the letter of recommendation from, either they can go without a letterhead, just on a simple A4 sheet, or they can use the new one.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. So we're at time. Thank you for joining. We had the opportunity to see a few of your faces, but more importantly, we wanted to introduce you to our team who's been working behind the scenes. We have Vinu and we have Pradeep here. So once you post your questions on our Inner Circle forum, they're the ones who are going to look out for answers and make sure they get those answers to you. The idea about the forum is, unlike WhatsApp, your answers will not get lost in this huge flood of questions, and it will be easily accessible to everybody else in the community. So feel free to access the Inner Circle forum. There's no charges to get access to the forum. You just need to sign in. I put the link on our chat, innercircle.capitsimplified.com/forum. You can post your questions there, and within 24 hours, we'll be able to get your answers more often than not. I know most of you also like to ask questions on our YouTube comments, but rather than YouTube comments, forum is a much better place because it's easy to navigate and answer for us in the back end. So thank you so much for joining. And for those of you who asked if this will be available as a recorded video, I think we can. We need some time for post-processing, but we should be hopefully uploading this on our YouTube channel. Thank you, guys, and have a good night or early morning, depending on which country, continent you are on.
And thanks to the team who also joined and was part of all. I know that some of it didn't mean anything to you guys, but thanks for joining.
Thank you.